The single most in-demand skill for independent filmmakers turns out is not directing, acting, writing, or lighting. It's actually fundraising. If you're watching this video, chances are you're watching it because that is your biggest hurdle. Back in 2014, I was already several years in my professional career, and I wrote a feature film script. But still, for about 5 years, I was flailing my arms trying to get that movie paid for. Fast forward to now, after learning a few extremely important but simple principles, I have raised over $1 million for my own original films as a first-time director without having a huge audience online.
From my heart to reality.
So filmmakers, in this video, what I'm going to be doing is talking about 3 really important questions for you and your next film project. Number 1, where can you go to find money for your film? And we're going to talk about the 7 sources of funding that I've identified that brought me that $1 million. Number 2, we're going to talk about how do you get money if you don't already have a built-in audience. And for that, we're going to talk about star power and genre power, which leads into number 3, how do you actually craft a winning pitch that gets you the money you need to go out and make your next project? Because whether it's a short film or a feature, it's the same game, and we'll talk about why. But let's jump into number 1. Where can you go to find money? Okay, so let's start with the 7 sources of funding that every filmmaker needs to understand. And I'm listing them in order of how you should approach them so that you can have the best possible chance of success. So number 1 is self-funding. Whether you like it or not, we kind of need to come up with seed money for our movies. And I have a couple caveats here. Number 1, really simply, even at the biggest level, when you're trying to come up with a pitch for your film, that's gonna cost some money. Just to create the words, the images, and the video you need to sell your film as an idea, that has some hard costs. So you might need to put up some money for that. But I think it's really important that self-funding does not become your source of funding for your film. You need to learn how to create films that other people are gonna pay for. So that leads into number 2, and this is the source of funding that every filmmaker needs to understand: crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is not charity. Crowdfunding is the way that every filmmaker needs to go about right now creating their next short film or even their next feature film. It actually teaches you every step of the process involved in creating a film pitch. It teaches you how to find customers, how to create something and package something that they can both consume and experience. So creating everything from the words to your key art to trailers, all of that is required in the crowdfunding process. Plus, you get to learn about your audience. You get to connect directly with your audience when you do a crowdfunding campaign. Okay, we'll talk more about that later. The next source is grants. Now, film grants exist all over the place, and once you learn how to package and present your film as a product, as an experience, you can then find grants out there that are gonna be aligned with what type of film you have, or what the demographics of your film are gonna speak to, or a unique story element in your film. Grants are great things to go after, and you have to learn how to craft basically your message so that it reaches the people who have money to put into your art. It's a great way to come up with funding, and it's very similar to one thing that we did on our film, which is your 4th source of funding: tax incentives. Now, depending on what country you're in or what state you reside in, qualifying for tax incentives is huge for filmmakers. We raised over 20% of our production budget for our feature film through a tax incentive. And it was very similar to a grant. You need to learn how to craft a pitch that will speak to the people who are in charge of allocating that money, which means that you actually have to design your film production to fit the mandates of that incentive. So it's similar to grants, but it ultimately is money that you don't have to pay back. Now, the next category is sponsorships. Sponsorships, specifically in this context, aren't necessarily fiscal sponsorships, but corporate sponsorships. This category is actually how we raised over about $200,000 for our own original short films. There are corporate entities out there, companies that want to go and they need exposure for their brand. They want to find customers to buy their products. And you as a filmmaker can create the assets through your film production to actually reach those customers. In order to get sponsorships, there's one hurdle you really have to hit. That's reaching an audience. Can you actually create content that reaches an audience that that company wants to reach? If you can crack this nut, which we talk about in our film funding course, this is actually a really powerful way. And I actually think it's one of the largest categories opening up right now because brands are more and more interested in paying for art from filmmakers. And then our final 2 here are gonna be private equity and pre-sales. I'm gonna pass over these a little bit quickly because both of them are a little bit of a can of worms. And if you're looking to make a short film, private equity is not something you even need to worry about. And if you're doing a feature film, I would say private equity should be the last source of funding that you come up with. My advice for 2026, especially for your first time independent feature film, less than $500,000, do not put more than 25% of your budget being private equity. That's just general advice. But again, it's a little bit more complicated, so I'll probably cover that in other videos. But the last one is pre-sales. This is where I'm at for my next film project. So what pre-sales really are is you put your film together, you have these pitch materials, and then you attach talent to your project because of your established clout. I've already made a feature film, so I can reach out and attach talent to my project with some startup capital. That talent, A-list talent from Hollywood, will attract international pre-sales for my project. What that means is there are companies out there that know the value of a specific celebrity and a specific genre in their country or in their territory. And so they have an amount of money that they'll just give you before you've even made your film to go and make that film with that actor in that genre. Now that's a complicated thing that really goes beyond the scope of what we're talking about here, except that process of pre-selling your film through distributors is almost the exact same process as crowdfunding or pre-selling your film directly to customers. So instead of creating a film with a certain genre and finding talent and attaching that talent to get businesses attached, you can do the same thing on a smaller scale and reach directly to customers to back a crowdfunding project. That essentially is a pre-sale, and the reason that I've done this particular order is you want to come up with the best funding sources where you do not have to pay that money back. Private equity, that is equity investment, meaning that you have to create a financial ROI, return on investment, for the people putting money into your film. You borrow money, you give it back with lift. But if you use crowdfunding, grants, tax incentives, and sponsorships, you ultimately can come up with several $1,000s or $100,000 for your movie. And by the time you're done making that movie, the movie's paid for. You're in the black. So that's my advice on where do you go. And if you're looking for how to create and find those leads, again, we break that down in more detail on Patreon and at the Film School, and that's all available essentially to start out for free. But if you really wanna know and dive deep, we have a full funding course that will walk you through this step by step, and for a couple $100, you can learn all of those exact strategies and then employ them and go get the money you need for your project. All right, with that, let's move on to number 2. How do you even get this money if you don't already have an audience? Now let's talk about genre power versus star power. Okay, so because of the algorithm and the fact that we're a new channel, we have a lot to cover. We split this video up into 2 videos. You can watch the second part right here. And if you've been enjoying this video, if you found this helpful, please share it with someone you know who is trying to raise money for their next film, whether that's a short film or a feature film. We want to get this information out there. Of course, like always, and all the YouTube channels everywhere, like, follow, subscribe, join us on Patreon for free, and we'll see you in the next one.